What's going on, everyone? It's Omar Almodovar here with Elite Recruits. In this video, I'm sitting down with one of our former athletes to share his experience in the transfer portal, what advice he has for guys going through the recruiting process, and really his experience during Elite Recruits. So go ahead, introduce yourself, tell them where you're from, and what school you were at when we first connected.
My name's Dennis Gamester. I'm from West Haven, Connecticut. I was coming from Sacred Heart University in Fairfield. Um, I wasn't supposed to have an extra year, so everything kind of happened pretty quick for me. But unfortunately, I got hurt, which gave me the opportunity to have a graduate year. So I decided to enter the portal around April 14th, and everything kind of just the ball got rolling from there.
All right, let's take it back a little bit. So before we started working together, what was going on with your recruiting process and what you feel like you needed the most help with?
Yeah, so for me, it was very interesting. I didn't really know what to expect out of it. I went into the portal, I got the official email that I was in, and then I had the somewhat knowledge that like Twitter was a pretty big recruiting thing. So I made my profile and followed coaches, sent a few messages out, and like the first day or two was pretty slow, and then a couple coaches started getting back to me, some like cool schools I was talking to, and then it got a little overwhelming to the point where like there were some questions being asked, especially like in today's day and age where like schools would ask about NIL or other questions like that, and I just didn't know how to answer it because it wasn't part of the recruiting process when I came out of high school. So like that kind of told me I needed some help in this process, that like maybe going into this alone wasn't the best idea. And that's kind of when I started looking for some help in the transfer portal.
100%. Now, for you, your issue wasn't that you weren't talking to schools, because I remember clearly you were getting plenty of attention from super big name schools, schools all over the country. But even though you were still getting attention from schools, you recognized that you needed help with other parts of the recruiting process, understanding, what was real interest from a school, what wasn't, how come they haven't replied to you, things like that, which sometimes get overlooked. A lot of players go, hey, I'm talking to a lot of schools, so I don't really need help. For you, what made you realize that, hey, having somebody by my side would make this process a lot easier?
Kind of just like I kept finding myself in the same boat of like I'd talk to a coach, we'd go back and forth a little bit, and then it would kind of go quiet, and then maybe a day or two later it'd pick back up, or then I might not hear from him again. Kind of just like trying to figure out the right thing to say and getting stuck a lot of the times.
For sure.
Just not knowing how to like get that ball rolling in the direction I want it. Because there was through like out the whole process, there was so many different questions and conversations that went so many different ways. So it was
100%.
hard to navigate, especially like, one school would ask about NIL and another school would completely ask like questions unrelated. And then balancing those conversations and trying to give the best possible answer for me was pretty challenging.
100%, especially in your situation where, like you said, you had 1 year left and it wasn't optional. You had to make the right choice. You had to find the best school for you. It just adds to the pressure of, hey, am I saying the right things? Am I asking the right questions? So for you, once we got started, we talked about what your goals were and we put together a game plan to help you achieve that. Can you talk a little bit about how important it was for you to actually have a game plan and guidance rather than just trying to figure it out on your own?
Yeah, for me, the guidance was super helpful early on. So we had organized everything in kind of like my own profile and spreadsheets, and that made it really easy for me to keep track of everything that was going on because it was easy at times to kind of like lose a conversation somewhere in like your DMs or text messages, and if you don't have a place to kind of track the last time you talked, it would get a little challenging. Um, Also having the resources of all these different college coaches that you provided was super easy. It made like the research part, trying to find like emails, phone numbers if you had them, Twitter handles, like all that stuff, all that information was provided, and it just made the process of like me reaching out to schools that I'm was interested in or trying to find other coaches on the same staff of these schools, like that was super easy, and that was like super beneficial for me throughout this whole process.
100%. Now, a lot of players, watching this, they might wonder what it's actually like being in the inside of the program with elite recruits. How would you describe, like, your experience as far as, the support you receive, the communication, and really just your overall experience on the inside?
Yeah, my overall experience was great. Like I have nothing bad to say like at all. It was like for me the biggest thing that I liked the most was like if I had a question, concern, like anything that came up, I was able to get an answer back like incredibly quickly, whether it was like what do I respond to this coach or how do I follow up with this message I might not have had like heard back in a few days. It's just like having that like extra assistance whenever you need it with anything in the process. That was for me, like being a part of the program, that was huge.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, obviously, you're a guy that you're at the same school throughout your whole college career up to this point, so you never really had, much of another recruiting process. Were you at first unsure about, working with someone and paying for recruiting help, and what ultimately changed your mind?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. Like recruiting at a high school was so different for me. It was just like on campus visits, talking to coaches in person, and like the Twitter, what like it was a thing, but it just really wasn't the level it is today.
Mhm.
And then I kind of realized like it was worth seeking out the help when I was entering, like obviously making this really hard decision because I only have the 1 year left. I'd rather be, working with someone that's done it before, has the experience working through this like specific process of, the social media, the outreach to coaches and stuff like that, rather than trying to do it on my own. And like to me, that was just the idea of having that assistance was completely worth it.
Absolutely. And obviously, it's crazy to say that like, oh, I didn't have any, skepticism going into it. It's a stranger over the internet that I've never met before. If somebody is watching this and they're still on the fence about, working with me, working with elite recruits, what would you tell them from your experience?
I would just say take the time to have like that initial Zoom meeting like we had really early on and just like get to know the person you're talking to, especially like when we first started talking, that was the first time we had ever met and we got into some really cool conversations and you took the time to like explain the whole process, explain everything you had to offer, but then you also took the time to kind of get to know me as a person and as an athlete, which I valued a lot. It wasn't just kind of like me giving money to someone and then them throwing information at me. It was more of a personal connection. And that's kind of what sold it for me was that it felt like you had like true value in building a relationship and
Yeah,
ultimately
absolutely.
helping me get to my next college.
100%. And it's funny too, and I told you this, obviously you're an older player in college and similar to my situation, you're in the portal as a grad guy. And I'm not a guy that's, 40, 50 years old. I was just in a locker room. I was just on your side of it. So it's very easy to care a lot about your future, knowing that I wish I had that same help when I was on your side of it and how much easier it makes things. And even to the point that you've already committed, our work is done, but we're still staying in contact. I'm checking in on, your car shipping all the way to the West Coast, checking in with your school application just because of the type of person that you were, right? Nothing to do with baseball, but you were a guy that you represented me well with college coaches. So I was willing to go to the end of the mile to help you as much as possible. Now, for you, obviously, the transfer portal was a tricky situation and kind of like how I told you, things happen really randomly. What would be your biggest piece of advice that you could leave a player with that's going through the recruiting process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say like for me, the first thing that jumped to my mind, kind of like right when you said that was just don't stop believing in yourself and don't stop like reaching out to coaches because it can get pretty like repetitive at times, kind of reaching out to coaches, introducing yourself, and then not necessarily hearing something back right away. So like it could look like, it might not be going your way, but in reality, like coaches are reading these messages and kind of like the situation I had with San Jose is, I shot a DM to one of the coaches and I just said, I'd love the opportunity to talk to you, learn about your program, learn about everything that you guys have to offer and tell you more about myself. And he didn't respond directly to the DM, but the next morning I woke up, I had a text waiting,
Yeah.
and it's like, "Hey man, this is Coach Walker from San Jose. Let's hop on a call and let's get to know each other." And everything kind of just took off from there. So like, you never really know when it's gonna happen, but definitely just like stick your head down and just keep going.
Exactly. And I want to make a point to that because exactly like you said, you don't know when it's going to happen. And at times it's frustrating. It takes longer than you pictured it. But you were a guy that you had the success you had because you never stopped doing the controllables, right? The posting on Twitter, the reaching out to coaches, the following up, using all the tools that I gave you. You're a guy that was consistently on it. And that's why at the end of it, it wasn't just San Jose, right? You had to make a really, really tough decision because you were in a position that you had multiple options on the table that were both really good. Ultimately, you chose what felt right, but it was a tough decision at the end because you had different options to choose from. So that is
Yeah,
everything in terms of, kudos to you and putting in the work.
yeah, it was a tough decision, but like a good problem to have. Like we had
100%.
talked about that like really early on. You said like the goal was to not just have one path to go to school. It's like having the ability to choose between a bunch of different options and figure out which one's the best. And like ultimately, that's what happened. So, and like
Absolutely.
even throughout that process, you were a text or a phone call away to help kind of like answer some questions before I ultimately made the decision. And like it was just awesome from the beginning to all the way up until right now.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Now you're headed off to the West Coast to play at San Jose State. If any guys watching this want to follow your journey or reach out for advice on social media, where can guys find you?
Just like Instagram's my name, Dennis Gamester 15. And then Twitter's just Gamester D 15. I just kind of post everything on there, and all my baseball stuff goes to either one. So I just keep
Sweet.
updated on both those.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share your journey through your transfer process, your experience with elite recruits, and also sharing advice for guys that might be in your same shoes in the near future. If you guys are watching this and you guys have any questions for Dennis, you want to know if this is real or not, feel free to reach out to him. He's not a paid actor, but appreciate you taking the time, my man. Good luck this year, and I'll definitely be in touch.
Of course. Thank you so much.